Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. This is my November reading wrap-up. I finally read some books in November. Feels like my reading habits got a little bit back to normal. Overall, it just felt like a really nice, solid reading month where I read a lot of anticipated things, but also discovered new books, one of which I couldn't stop thinking about. But we're going to start by talking about The Nameless Land by Kate Elliott. This is the second book in the Which Roads duology. I think I've mentioned it here before, so I won't talk about it for too long. But it did come out in November, and I made sure to read it. The duology is complete, and I think it's a great taste of a Kate Elliott story. Typically, she writes series, trilogies, or longer book series, and I love that this whole story is complete in a duology. However, there is definitely room to explore this world further, and I do think there are going to be more works set in this world I've seen announced. I just don't recall what all of the details are. The Which Roads, The Nameless Land, beautiful covers, completed duology. Would recommend, especially if you enjoy character growth, like very competent characters that may not all be likable, but you can understand why they are saying and doing what they're doing, an imaginative world and magic system, and in this duology, a very rather fast-paced, action-forward plot. Continuing on with fantasy, I read the next in my Lois McMaster Bulljoe backlist, which is The Hallowed Hunt. It takes place in the same world as The Curse of the Chalian and Paladin of Souls, although each of these stories is technically standalone. Some of the characters mentioned may be familiar to you from previous works, but if you haven't read them, that's okay. You still have enough context to understand what's going on. I think the overarching series or world name for these books is The Five Gods or something like that, and so that aspect of the religion, how there are five figures like mother, brother, father, sister, bastard, are central to the world building. These are gods that impact events in the world by working through people they directly touch, paladins, so to speak, and may have glancing effects on others as they come across them. It's not the only sort of supernatural element coming into play in this story, because apparently there is a culture that can complete these rites, and the spirits or the souls of animals can impact humans, like through a shamanistic type thing. And that is what's sort of running rampant in the story. The main character is a very trusted man in the household of a very powerful person, and when the potential heir to this kingdom is murdered, he is sent out to understand what happened and to take the person into custody. What he learns is that the murderer essentially disrupted this dark and pretty evil ritual that the heir was trying to perform on her to summon these spirits, and things start going haywire from there. So our main character is trying to get to the truth, but it's very dangerous, and some powerful people probably would not want this information coming to light. He realizes that he believes the murderer and wants to help them, but there's politics at play. It is kind of dark when you think about some of the elements of this ritual, so I would just kind of look into that if that sort of thing worries you. But again, with Lois McMaster Bulljoe, it's the characters and how competent they are and how clever they can be in the face of some overwhelming odds. And now I think the next part of my adventure into this backlist of her fantasy work is starting Penric and Desdemona. So that's what I have to pick up next, Penric's Progress. If you've read it, let me know what you think. Of the three books in this world I've read so far, Curse of the Chalian, Paladin of Souls, and The Hallowed Hunt, they're all quite different. They're following different types of characters. I still think Paladin of Souls is my favorite, but I think that they're all excellent, fun, imaginative fantasy. Some fantasy horror that I tried at the request of my sister was Fairy Tale by Stephen King. It is a contemporary portal fantasy. This young boy begins to help one of his neighbors because he is drawn to the neighbor's aging old dog. So by wanting to help out this dog, he starts to help out this neighbor. The neighbor is very odd, very secretive, doesn't want to accept help, but definitely needs it. And as he and Charlie grow to trust one another, Charlie starts being let in on some of his secrets. And then when that neighbor ultimately dies, Charlie goes on this mission, mostly to help the dog, but also to uncover more about the past. I mentioned it's a portal fantasy, so he ends up going through to this other world, and thus the adventure unfolds. I found myself really liking the connection that he had with this dog, but I do think some of the other elements of the storyline I didn't care so much about, because there's a lot of buildup and time spent in the contemporary world building up Charlie's character, and it felt like some of the fantasy elements and that whole storyline that we were introduced to there felt really out of the blue to me, and I had a hard time connecting with that aspect of the story. But I'm still glad I gave Stephen King another try, so I guess the next thing to try is an actual horror. What should I try? What should I try first? Let me know. Okay, this next book I'm going to talk about is one that really took me by surprise. It's quite long, and yet once I started it, I didn't want to stop reading it. I think I saw it recommended on Reddit, and it's a historical romance, but it's a type that I've never read before. This is set at the beginning of World War II in the Soviet Union, and the characters are in Leningrad. One is a young girl who's very, very naive, and she's so naive that I almost stopped reading the first chapter. And the other is an officer in the army that's there to protect Leningrad, and things are going to get very bad. So this book is quite grim and dark from the aspects of the war and what's going to happen there. It's the story of these two characters, like, finding each other and making it through those horrible events of the war and beyond. And the book is The Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simons. It's not a new book. I think it was published in 2000 or the early 2000s. It's quite long. Definitely the character growth in this story, especially with Tatiana, the girl she starts out, she's like 17, very naive at the beginning, and becomes quite thrifty, hardened, determined. Like, how she grows to just take on the challenges put before her as these horrors are unfolding around her was astounding. And by the time you get to the end, like, I just really admired her by the end. Alexander is the soldier. He's a couple years older. He has his own kind of backstory brewing. He was actually born in America, and his parents defected to the Soviet Union to become communists, like, when he was a very young boy. And so he has been there ever since, and now considers himself Russian. He is just trying to do the best he can in these very different circumstances than what he was originally born into. But the shine has worn off the penny, so to speak. He has been trying to make plans to leave, and now those plans are somewhat entangled as his attachment with Tatiana and her family grow. So it's not a straightforward relationship at all. There's a lot of kind of family dynamics and drama going on in here, which, to me, that aspect of the story I don't want to talk about for spoilers, made me very frustrated, and yet them having to kind of overcome and work through all that, it felt very hard won, I guess I'll say that. This is the first book in a trilogy. The story is definitely not complete. Like, you can read this one and it has a conclusion. Whether you're satisfied with that conclusion yet, I wasn't, and I need to read the next one, which thankfully is available at my library. But I also needed to give myself a little break because of how emotional and intense the events of this book are. So I don't know if I'm doing a good job talking about it. It was great. Like, I had it from the library, and it impacted me so much. I went and I got this copy on eBay so I would have it on my bookshelf. There's a lot going on. The historical accuracy, a lot of history, a lot about the war. And then with these two characters, it's just, I've never read a historical fiction, a historical romance like this, and I was really impressed. So if this sounds like it's up your alley, I would give it a chance, but it's pretty heavy. Like, I want to read the next one, but I just need, I need a moment to collect myself. Okay, I've rambled long enough. I really enjoyed what I read this month for the most part. My brain really enjoyed that break. I had turned over my novel to my critique partners. They were reading it, so I could stop thinking about it for a little bit. But now I have their comments back and it's time to start working on revisions. So we'll see what I managed to read this month at the end of the year. But I was able to read almost every book on my autumnal kind of wish list. I think I read everything or almost everything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this video as we are entering the holiday season. If you celebrate, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family, and regardless, I hope you are able to relax a little bit for these next few weeks at the end of the year and spend some time doing some things that you enjoy with people who you love. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this video, and as always, don't forget to support your local library. Thanks.